Good evening, and for those that are watching, we're going to take a couple minutes here until Denise comes in. She's in the building, but we're waiting her. She's making some copies that are necessary for this evening's meeting, so stay tuned.
Music off on my phone. Could
No.
put some nice elevator music on, set the mood.
How about some Pink Floyd? We could play some Lawrence Welk for Jim Slough. No, sure. I've got some obscure, I call them deep tracks. It's like side B of some old rock albums. I was quite appreciative of rock back in my day with the Renaissance. There was such an uproar, like, well, they all thought he was deaf music and everything like that. So, well, we all rode our bikes over there, and we didn't go in, right? We all rode our bikes from here. That was before school's out, but we still had some songs, not on the radio, not on CKLW. Yeah, I don't know about that. But that was the first time, yes. And I can't really say I went for it. I was just there. Well, we could do old times, but we're gonna give her the 5 act. Then we're gonna give her 5 minutes. Okay, we're gonna start by doing some of this. So bear with me, but we're gonna start with the roll call. Just say aye if your name is called. Mr. Niemeyer.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Here.
Mr. Greeno,
Here.
Mr. Slough, Ms. Warnicki, Mr. Hellman, Mr. Haas, Mr. Russell,
Here.
Mr. Wobser.
Present.
Both Mr. Hellman and Mr. Haas informed me prior to tonight's meeting that they will not be able to attend. I would entertain a motion to excuse. Mr. Russell,
Move to excuse.
second. Mr. Slough. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Haas and Mr. Hellman say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. They are excused. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will entertain a motion to accept the August 3rd regular session of City Council minutes. Mr. Slough,
I would move to approve the minutes of the August 3rd regular session of council.
second Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of accepting the minutes from August 3rd say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? They are okayed. We do have an add-on this evening. I think, I just saw Denise. I think she's in the middle of getting that. So let's,
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. President Harrington, we do have one add-on. It is ordinance 2021-086, a property acquisition. And I would move that 2021-086 be added to the agenda.
second Mr. Slough. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adding that to the tonight's agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? That is okayed. Okay, we do not have any proclamations. We have no recognition or retirement resolutions. We have no oral communications. We have no petitions. We have no written communications. We have reports. I'm going to go really slow here. Of municipal officers and municipal departments.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for July 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
City Planning Commission agenda for August 12th, 2021, as well as the minutes of July 8th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Agenda and minutes to be filed.
Findlay Fire Department Activities Report for July 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Police Departmental Activities Report for July 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding second quarter KPIs.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Findlay Municipal Court Activities Report for July 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
Financial Summary Report as of July 31st, 2021.
Questions or comments? Reports to be filed.
Treasurer's Reconciliation Report for July 31st, 2021.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Council President Harrington regarding local board of review appointment. This requires council's confirmation.
Mr. Russell.
I would move that Pat Sadowski be confirmed as our appointment to the local board of tax review.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. I will let you know that he will fill out the term of Roger Miller, and that term will expire at the same time as the current other two members of that. And at that time, all three members will either then be reconfirmed or, stay tuned on that one. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the appointment, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. He is confirmed.
Letter from Mayor Mern regarding FEMA grants benching area.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from City Auditor Stashak regarding timekeeping system, advanced scheduling system, and related equipment.
Mr. Wobser.
Jim, on this, your letter looks good. It looks like this is a good move. Have you had any thoughts or put any calculations on how much this might save us? Or your office? And
Sure. We've taken a good look at that. I always save the good numbers for your committee meetings, but I'm happy to share them here. So in looking at this, what's nice is there's money left over from some projects for the majority of the funding. And it looks like PD would get some phenomenal use out of an additional component of this. In looking at the base savings from switching to the system and the processes that we have in place now, the total cash savings we've calculated in looking at all the departments, including my office, is about almost $68,000. So when we deduct the licensing fees from that, which will run me a little less than 30, we're looking at almost a $40,000 a year savings by upgrading and updating this process. So there's good business cost justification. And the really nice thing about it that I'm pleased with is we will not have to change one badge here for the most part. I think unless an employee has an older badge, we'll be able to keep everything the way it is and have better accountability.
very good. Thank you.
Mr. Slough.
Jim, was anybody else considered? Were there any other individuals or companies that?
Yeah, multiple companies have been considered over the years, and in looking at this, the main challenge has been the technology just wasn't there. That wouldn't put us in a situation where we would have to marry two different vendors through a third piece of software that we either created or hired a consultant to do. And the computer services world has changed so much. You know, when 20 years ago, our computer services team developed everything in-house. They wrote the programs. They when we bought an outside vendor, they made sure it worked, and they did the enhancements and reports. Today, we're not really in that business anymore. So we're really blessed that we can use the existing vendor we have, Tyler, and they have the enhancements that we're looking for to do this properly and save that kind of money. And then ultimately, what's really nice about this is it'll continue to evolve as our financial system evolves. So I'm really pleased with that. And it'll ultimately end up marrying with what we call the ESS, or employee self-service module that we have out there. So there's a lot of good benefits.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Wobser.
Normally, we would take and run this through, excuse me, appropriations, but given the scope of the project and the information given here, I'll leave it up to the rest of the Appropriations Committee if we want to do that or not. I would suggest that I think we've got enough here to make the decision, let council go forward. Is everybody else in agreement with that? Thank you. We're good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, letter to be filed.
Income Tax Board minutes of August 10th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Mr. Stashak.
I think it should be noted for the record, these are the minutes as taken. They just haven't been approved by the board. And I just note that for the record.
So noted. Any other questions? Letter to be, or minutes to be filed?
Traffic Commission minutes of July 19th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed?
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding the 2021 annual street resurfacing curb repairs, project number 3281090.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed?
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding 2021 annual street resurfacing curb repairs, contract A for concrete, project number 3281090, as well as 2021 street preventive maintenance, project number 3281040.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed?
Letter from City Engineer Kalb regarding 2021 annual street resurfacing curb repairs, contract B for asphalt, project number 3281090, as well as the 2021 street preventive maintenance, project number 3281040.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding Ohio Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Grant.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Engineer Calb regarding East and East Main Cross Water Line, project number 357-11300.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Board of Zoning Appeals minutes for May 13th, 2021, as well as July 15th, 2021.
Questions or comments? Minutes to be filed. Committee reports.
The Strategic Planning Committee met on August 3rd, 2021 to continue request for proposals discussions. We recommend to continue to review the draft RFP and meet again on August 10th, 2021 at 4 p.m.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted.
The Strategic Planning Committee met on August 10th, 2021 to continue request for proposals discussions. We recommend legislation be developed and on the August 17th, 2021 council agenda authorizing the publication of the RFP. The committee will meet again to finalize the RFP on August 17th, 2021 at 6 p.m.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Questions or comments? All those in favor of adopting the committee report say aye. Any opposed, nay. It is adopted.
The Water and Sewer Committee met on August 11th, 2021 to discuss the Bluebonnet, Bittersweet tap and permit fees. We recommend to table this issue for further discussion with the law director.
Mr. Greeno.
Make a motion to approve.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Questions or comments? All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Committee report is adopted.
The Water and Sewer Committee met on August 11th, 2021 to discuss a water wastewater grant opportunity. We recommend to support this application for the grant money.
Mr. Greeno.
Move to accept.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Committee report is adopted.
The Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from Brian Buck on behalf of his father William Buck to rezone Madison Avenue lot 6192, 6193, 6194 from R3 Single Family High Density to C1 Local Commercial District. This request was previously discussed during the May 13th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Committee meeting where it was tabled. We recommend this remain tabled.
Mr. Russell.
Move for acceptance of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The committee report is accepted.
Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom is referred a request from Van Horn Hoover and Associates Incorporated on behalf of property owner Hugo Nort to rezone the remaining land in the Deer Ridge Mobile Home Park from Mobile Home MH District to M2 Multiple Family High Density with the northeast corner of 9.66 acres being zoned I-1 Light Industrial. We recommend to approve as requested.
Mr. Russell.
Move for adoption of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee report say aye. Any opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted.
Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from James Holtgreven Holt Hammer Ventures LLC to rezone 812 Tiffin Avenue from R3 Small Lot Residential to C1 Local Commercial. We recommend to approve as requested.
Mr. Slough.
Move for adoption of the committee report.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted.
Planning and Zoning Committee, to whom was referred a request from Carl Haslett to vacate the east-west alley from Lilac Lane to the west lot line of Lot 24 in the Old Orchard 4th Edition, bounded between lots 19 to 24 in the Old Orchard 4th Edition and lots 4023 to 4033 in the Chamberlain Hill Edition. We recommend to approve as requested.
Mr. Slough.
Move for adoption of the committee report.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. The committee report is adopted. Legislation, we'll start with resolutions.
Third reading for Resolution 15, 2021, a resolution authorizing the city auditor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to apply for the American Rescue Plan Act dollars on eligible expenditures as specified in the United States Treasury's Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds interim final rule, eventually the final rule, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Slough.
Move for adoption of Resolution 15, 2021.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Discussion? All those in favor of the resolution say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki, and Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted.
First reading for Resolution 16, 2021, a resolution approving the expenditures made by the Auditor's Office on the attached list of vouchers which either exceed the purchase order or were incurred without a purchase order exceeding the statutory limit of $3,000, all in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 5705.41D.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion to approve Resolution 16, 2021.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? All those in favor of Resolution 16, 2021 say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
The resolution is adopted. Ordinances.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-71, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into an agreement with the village of Genera for services to administer, enforce, and collect taxes levied by Genera under their village income tax on certain incomes of residents, non-residents, net profit of residents, and net profits of non-resident businesses and entities in accordance with said village income tax ordinance and declaring an emergency. Second reading for ordinance 2021-74, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
As our time to do street maintenance is slowly dwindling here, I would think it behooves us to take advantage of this and get this thing moving. So therefore I request that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2021-074 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules of council say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
and Mr. Niemeyer.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance 2021-074 its third reading.
Ordinance 2021-74.
Mr. Greeno.
Move for adoption of ordinance number 2021-074.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
and Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2021-75, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and our city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio to waive formal advertising and bidding and enter into an agreement with Harold E. Shuck Incorporated for repairs on the City of Findlay Water Pollution Control Center roofs and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2021-77, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Findlay, Ohio to accept permanent ownership of 3 properties totaling 7 parcels from the Hancock County Board of County Commissioners as acquired under FEMA, FMA Fiscal Year 14 and FMA Fiscal Year 16 to the City of Findlay and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2021-78, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the City of Findlay, Ohio to submit a request for proposal to the 4 qualifying firms previously chosen through the request for qualifications process who can perform the services for the City of Findlay strategic plan process and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Wobser.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the rest of council, the Strategic Planning Committee finished this afternoon the final draft, the final draft of the RFP, which you received a copy of tonight. Took a lot of work to get this done, and I think it's a very good document. Follows all of the Ohio Revised Code issues that we want to make sure that we follow in an RFP type process. I want to thank all the committee members for their hard work on this, and I think we've got a wonderful document that's going to lead us to a good conclusion. One thing for everyone's consideration, the committee has asked, or would ask, that council give this 2 readings, and that we would pass this after the September 7th meeting, so that we can stick to the timeline that is listed on page 3 of the RFP. So plenty of time to read through it between now and the first meeting in September. And I would suggest, if you have any questions, to contact myself or the mayor, and we'd be glad to discuss those with you. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh.
Sorry, Ms. Mayor?
I was just going to state as well that we will put the proposed version that's in front of council on the website, so that if the public would like to view it, it's easily accessible there as well. And just to reiterate, as Councilman Wobser stated, if you have questions or comments regarding that, please feel free to email strategic-planning@findlayohio.com or Councilman Wobser or myself.
First reading for ordinance 2021-79, an ordinance authorizing the auditor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to waive formal advertising and bidding and enter into an agreement or agreements with Tyler Technology to acquire additional software and equipment related to payroll processing of the city of Findlay's current Tyler payroll system, appropriating and transferring funds, and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2021-80, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio to waive formal advertising and bidding requirements and enter into contracts for the city's 2021 annual street resurfacing, curb repairs, Contract A, concrete, and Contract B, asphalt, project number 328-10900, and the city's 2021 street preventive maintenance project number 328-10400, appropriating and transferring funds thereto, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell?
Jeremy, under the same kind of thought process as that last ordinance that we passed on suspended, is there a benefit on this one to pass tonight?
Yes, there would be, because we actually have crews in town right now. They're working on the base contract work right now. I was kind of holding them off on this stuff, but they're in town, they're moving. It would be nice to keep them rolling along, so that way we can get these streets paved as soon as possible.
Mr. Russell? Second, Mr. Niemeyer. All those in favor of suspending the rules of council, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki, Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-80, ordinance 2021-80.
Mr. Russell?
Move for adoption of 2021-080.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki, Mr. Wobser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
and Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2021-81, an ordinance authorizing the mayor and or service safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to apply for the water and wastewater infrastructure grant program and sign any and all applicable grant agreement or agreements for related documents, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell?
Yeah, Rob and Jeremy, I appreciate you talking to Water and Sewer about these projects. I think it would be worthwhile to kind of go over those same conversations, so the rest of council and the community can hear about what we're talking about, what we're looking at pursuing. and the need to get this passed tonight.
So when we discussed with you guys, we were looking at three main projects to go after. Two of them would be water projects. One of them will be the reservoir vault valve replacement. It's for our transfer pipe out over at the reservoir, and they are deteriorating. They are leaking, and they've kind of ran their useful life. They've been put in, I think it was the 40s or early 50s, something like that. So they've ran their life. It's needing done. As as part of that, we're also going to install an emergency overflow for both the reservoirs, so that way we don't have to do any kind of overflow structure on the reservoir themselves. So we can put all this in with actuated valves that would be able to be ran from the plant instead of all manual stuff. All this work is needing done. One way or another, we have to do this project just with the condition of that. So this is a great opportunity to go after that. Along with that, also a water project, we are looking at submitting a project to do CO2 tank replacement and generator replacement at the water treatment plant. Same situation, we need those for our operation for clean water to the citizens. We're looking to submit those as well. Each of those are roughly in the $2 million range, and with my request, we are using up to $500,000 as our match money for the grant for the water funds. So that's why we are working. It's not going to be $250 for each one. We're going to see what our past money that we have used for these projects and operating costs we can use as our matching for that. So we will be kind of working around on how we're going to use that $500,000 if we even use that max amount. But we're going to try to maximize our match amount as much as we can, so that we have a good chance for these two projects on that end. And then the third project we're looking at is extending a sewer on County Road 99 up north of Lowe's Distribution. Lately, we've been getting a lot of interest in that area, working with economic and development and stuff. We see that this could be a good opportunity to extend that line, make that a little bit more shovel ready for the future. Maybe we can bring in some more industry and stuff up in that area. And then kind of talking after the webinar, I had a webinar Friday with this, and there was a lot of discussion about meter projects, water meter projects, and there's probably 8 of them on there that was asking if that was an eligible project. They were saying yes, that is a good project to submit. So just kind of talking back and forth with Rob and myself, we were thinking to submit that as a 4th project and not commit any additional water funds to it, since we've already had, say, 2 years of work already as our matching fund, to try to get the next 4 years on the grant for that and use our past work as our matching fund. Like I said, we don't expect to be committing any more water funds for that, but it's an opportunity out there. There's no limits on how many projects we can submit. So that was another one after the webinar we thought it'd be great to add on as well.
Mr.
So
Russell.
can you promise this council and the citizens of Findlay that these new valves will last 70 to 80 years? And if they don't, you or your children will replace them?
My great grandkids will, so.
Ms. Mayor.
I was just going to add and just kind of reiterate. Well, first, Jeremy and Rob and Jason and Dave and the teams have been looking and doing a lot of planning so that we can take advantage of grant opportunities like this. So when we talk about the overflow valves or the CO2 tanks, these are not items that immediately need to be completed. But by planning and identifying them, we can watch for opportunities like this one that present themselves to help cover the cost of them. So by having these lists of projects and kind of planning and understanding our systems, we're able to take advantage of these. I know we had mentioned this at the last council meeting that we were going to be coming to you because we literally received it the day before the council meeting, and we wanted to get our team together and identify what projects we felt were best prepared to be able to submit. And as we had shared, we would like this to be, we need it to be passed tonight, because the way that this grant works is we have to submit it to the county engineer for review and grading, and kind of he ranks them and then submits them to the state for consideration. So this is something that, we typically like to have more time to evaluate and discuss this, but we tried to give you a heads up that this would be coming in front of you tonight, and would appreciate your attention to this matter and in approving it tonight so that we can move forward in applying to this grant opportunity.
Mr. Russell.
And then the grant funding is coming through Ohio Department of Development, I believe. What's the source of the funds?
It's through their ARPA funds that they've received through that, so ultimately it'd be, it's federal funds going to the state and back to us.
Mr. Russell.
I would move that council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2021-081 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
And Mr. Slough?
Rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-081, ordinance 2021-81.
Mr. Greeno.
I move that ordinance number 2021-081 be approved.
Second, Ms. Warnicki. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2021-82, an ordinance authorizing the mayor, service safety director, and or city engineer of the city of Findlay, Ohio to waive formal advertising and bidding requirements and enter into a contractor contracts with Helms and Sons Excavating Incorporated for the East and East Main Cross Street Waterline Project number 357-11300 and declared an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
This is a paperwork ordinance, in essence ensuring that our work that we're doing at the intersection of Main Cross and over at the bridge is proper, and for that reason, because it's actually ongoing as we speak, I would move that we would suspend council statutory rules and ordinance 2021-082 be given its second and third reading.
Second, Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of suspending the rules say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
The rules of council has been suspended, and the clerk will give the ordinance its second and third reading.
Ordinance 2021-82, ordinance 2021-82.
Mr. Wobser.
Make a motion that 2021-82 be approved.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion? Mr. Wobser.
I'm glad, Jeremy, that we're got this suspended, and hopefully it'll get approved here in a second. We've got quite the mess out there. We're living in that area. We've got people now coming down Crawford Street the wrong direction because they get caught at the end of what is now the termination of East Street at the barriers there. So any idea if everything continues, weather holds, what we're looking at here, how much longer we're going to be have that street closed?
So the way we're looking right now, it's probably going to be closer towards the end of September. Those couple rain days kind of set us back. It got pretty soft in that area, so we couldn't really even install the water line or any kind of other piping just because it would track it up quite a bit. So right now we're looking at end of September. But as soon as we can get at least some kind of path open, either for Main Cross or East Street, working with the contractor, they're very good about it. They know that that is a very busy intersection, that we're going to try to get something open as soon as possible on that.
Appreciate your diligence on that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the ordinance say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
And Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
First reading for ordinance 2021-83, an ordinance amending Chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the City of Findlay, Ohio, known as a zoning code by rezoning the following described property, referred to as the Deer Ridge Mobile Home Park, which previously was zoned MH Mobile Home, to M2 multifamily high density with the northeast corner of 9.66 acres being zoned I-1 light industrial. First reading for ordinance 2021-84. An ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 812 Tiffin Avenue rezone, which previously was zoned R3 small lot residential, to C1 local commercial district. First reading for ordinance 2021-85. An ordinance vacating a certain portion of a certain alley, hereinafter referred to as the Coventry Drive Vacation in the city of Findlay, Ohio. First reading for ordinance 2021-86. An ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a purchase agreement for the acquisition of property located within the city of Findlay, Ohio limits and declaring an emergency.
Old business. New business. Mr. Greeno.
Yes, I'd like to set up a water and sewer meeting for September the 1st at 5 o'clock. Hopefully in the third floor room, conference room upstairs. And we'll be discussing the fee waiver that we've talked about that is tabled currently for Blue Bonnet and Bittersweet area.
Other new business? Mr. Niemeyer.
I'd like to call a meeting of street sidewalks and parking, September 7th, 6:30 for our regular meeting.
Other new business? Mr. Martin.
If I may, Councilman Whoopser, if you recall, a few meetings back that you had mentioned about data through the KPIs for the police department. And I did a little follow-up with Chief Ring. The current situation is the data seem to be elevated or skewed to be higher than normal because of the data points that are in the new system compared to Interbadge. It's a lot more detailed, it's more specific, so it's better, it's more thorough, but compared to the older system, it seems to be creating a flex, if you will, of the numbers. But talking to the chief, he said the normal cadence of the day, we're back to pre-COVID, and there's no additional stress right now on the team. So it'll take, we talked through this, it'll take essentially to 2023 before we'll have 3 years of true data, if you will, because of the variance of old system, new system with the new data points. So.
No, I appreciate you running that down, Rob. I think that's good information for everybody because we'll eventually start to see those new reports, correct?
Correct.
And we'll have to have a kind of line in the sand from old to new, and we noted for the community also as they look at that data. So that's very interesting to know, but hopefully that's good news for us going forward. We'll be able to look at this and ascertain, trends much easier.
Other new business? At this time, okay, you gotta raise your hand, Ms.
Yep.
Mayor.
Yeah, I was. So I just wanted to hit on a couple quick items. As I mentioned, the RFP will be on the strategic planning website for review. I want to give a shout out to our computer services team. As you can tell, the sound is much better in here. Hopefully the audio visual quality is also improving as they work to update and implement the new system within council chambers and for our streaming services. I know there was an article today in the newspaper about the census data. As we continue to get more detail in that, we'll distribute that to you all so we can dig into it a little bit more. I think it'll be interesting to dig into it. I think it's probably, unfortunately, underrepresented as we all look at the community as a whole. I think we have grown, but unfortunately, we probably have a little bit more of a transient population in some areas of our community, which cause difficulties in capturing those individuals. So we'll continue to provide a great community and hopefully see some growth over the next couple of years. As Rob mentioned, our police data, we are not seeing an elevation in crime, which I think is really important to note. That's obviously a very important indicator that we watch. What we have seen is a change in how we are reporting that. So we'll be looking at ways that we can kind of true that up to make sure that you all have a clear understanding. But in the meantime, please note that it's really because we are capturing more data in our new system, which is really going to be beneficial. And we will continue to look for opportunities to provide cleaner, more digestible reports for the community and for council. In that same vein, as we look at the lost water reduction, that's one item that we've been working on and been kind of following up on with you all regularly. So I spoke with our crews and they wanted to kind of hit on a couple of items that they've been working on. We had a couple of flushing stations that were replaced where we were having to purge more water than was being able to be captured because there are certain parts of town where we don't have loops. We have to be able to maintain water pressure and keep those lines cleared. We have to flush so much water per day. That's something we don't like to do, but is inevitable in some areas. And we did not have meters that could capture the amount of water that was accurately being flushed. So that's one main item that has been addressed. We identified, if you recall, you passed legislation to allow us to do large meter testing and go in and work with businesses to address where they may have outdated, inaccurate, or systems that were not appropriate for their water usage. So we identified a couple of customers that were utilizing fire lines and pulling water from a fire system that was unmetered. So working with those to identify those situations and clean those up. But our teams are doing a lot of great work, and so I'm glad to see that number continue to reduce and make sure that we're appropriately capturing revenue, which in turn supports city operations. You guys have all been really busy. Appreciate the work on all of the committees. Last item, fortunately, we are seeing increases in COVID cases locally right now. We've been talking regularly with the hospital. They're not seeing huge influxes, though they are seeing an increase. So city employees will be going back to masking when they are in close proximity to others in confined spaces tomorrow. Certainly none of us like to wear masks. I know I would be totally fine if I wasn't wearing a mask. But wanting to make sure that we continue to keep our employees safe, the public safe, and be able to maintain operations. One thing that a lot of our employees do is work in close proximity with other employees, and we can't afford to have departments sick at one time and not be operational to continue to provide services. So I appreciate the understanding of our employees and making sure that we're continuing to serve the community and adjusting appropriately as we continue to watch the numbers. This was largely due to the fact that we were starting to see a couple of cases within our city employees, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't have spread among our employees. So just wanted to share that with you all. But I think that is it for me, other than making sure that we go to executive session here in a moment.
Mr. Russell?
So on these cases where you have people tapping in the fire lines for water services, is that how does that happen, and what recourse does the would that client do we charge them in arrears or something, or I wouldn't think that'd be something that would really be like a legal water tap, and I'm wondering what the recourse is.
Yeah, so it's situational. First of all, our teams do a great job of monitoring it and finding those abnormalities. We knew something was off, and we can kind of start narrowing it down. Depending on how long we believe it was occurring, there have been situations where we backbill them. So that we do recapture as much of that revenue as possible. In other instances, the customer wasn't aware of it, and maybe it was a plumbing job that was done inappropriately, intentionally or accidentally. So we really just work with them to identify what's the best recourse of action. In all of the situations, we work with them to obviously rectify it. Typically, that means either replumbing or adding a meter to their fire line. And so we just work with them as may be appropriate.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion that we adjourn to executive session for discussion of the purchase of property. Mr. Russell?
Well, I would make such a motion that council adjourn into executive session to discuss property acquisition, specifically the property in 2021-086.
Second, Mr. Wobser. I think it is appropriate to note that there will be no additional action by council after executive session. Ms. Mayor? Okay, we are adjourned to executive session. Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor of adjourning to executive session say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. We are adjourned.